If you're a U.S. citizen, a green card holder, or someone still waiting for approval, what we're talking about today matters to you. Because yes, there are real situations where a person can lose U.S. citizenship. And many people don't really understand how that works or how rare it actually is. My goal today is not to scare you. It's to bring calm, clear information. When you understand the rules, you feel more prepared, more confident, and more in control of your own journey. Hi, I'm Timothy, and thank you for trusting me to walk through these important immigration topics with you. Every day, policies shift, processing times change, new announcements appear, and small details can sometimes make a big difference to real families. In this episode, we're going to talk about the truth behind losing citizenship, how it happens, who it can affect, and what it really means, while also touching on key immigration updates that may impact applicants, families, workers, and students around the world. And as always, this is not legal advice. I am not a government official or an attorney. I'm here to explain information in a simple, steady, supportive way so you don't feel lost or overwhelmed. Many people believe that once you become a U.S. citizen, nothing can ever change. You receive your passport, you vote, you feel settled, and it seems permanent. In most cases, it is very stable, but the reality is slightly more complex. U.S. citizenship is extremely strong and heavily protected, but it is not completely untouchable. There are specific laws, defined processes, and formal systems that deal with cases where something may not have been done correctly. That does not mean the government is constantly searching for ways to take citizenship away. It means citizenship is taken seriously, and the path to getting it is expected to be honest and lawful from beginning to end. Before we talk about how someone can lose citizenship, it helps to understand who is considered a citizen in the first place. Some people are citizens by birth. They were born in the United States or certain U.S. territories, or they were born abroad to at least one American parent who was able to pass citizenship to them. Others become citizens through naturalization. They were not born American, but they went through the legal process, held permanent residence, passed the required exams, took the oath, and were granted citizenship. Both groups are citizens. Both groups have rights. Both are protected by the Constitution. But there is one important difference in how the law looks at their history. For people who are U.S. citizens from birth, their status is usually extremely secure. In almost all situations, it cannot be taken away unless there was major fraud involving identity or birth records right from the start, and that is very rare. For naturalized citizens, there is a long paper trail: applications, interviews, background checks, and signed forms. If, much later, the government discovers that something critical in that process was intentionally hidden or falsified, it has the legal authority to review what happened. That does not mean that every mistake automatically endangers citizenship. It does not mean that small errors or confusion on a form years ago will ruin a life. Reviews in this area usually focus on deliberate, serious deception, not on language difficulties, forgotten dates, or honest misunderstandings. So as we move forward, I want you to keep one thing in mind. Most people never face citizenship problems. The cases you occasionally hear about almost always involve clear fraud, major criminal deception, or choices that directly conflict with the oath of allegiance. Let's begin with a situation that actually isn't frightening at all, because it's completely voluntary. The first real way someone can lose U.S. citizenship is by choosing to give it up. This is called renunciation. It's not something that happens by accident or out of frustration. You cannot lose citizenship just because you move abroad, feel angry at the government one day, or post online that you don't want to be American anymore. Renunciation is a formal legal act that takes place in person at a U.S. embassy or consulate outside the United States. You meet with an official, you review and sign detailed paperwork, and you take an oath stating clearly that you understand what you are doing and that you intend to give up your citizenship. There is also a significant fee. Once completed, renunciation is generally permanent. There is no simple way to undo it. People choose to renounce for many reasons. Some have lived abroad for decades and feel fully rooted in another country. Others want to simplify complex tax or financial situations. Some do it for personal, political, or identity reasons. Whatever the reason, The key point is that it is a personal decision. It is not forced, and when someone renounces, they lose the right to vote, they lose automatic entry to the United States, and they may need a visa in the future even just to visit. For the vast majority of people, this will never be part of their life. It is rare, intentional, and carefully documented. And it's important to say this clearly. Simply living overseas, holding another citizenship, or spending a long time abroad does not mean you have renounced or lost your U.S. citizenship. Renunciation happens only when someone deliberately goes through the formal process. Now let's move to the area where people's anxiety often rises. Denaturalization. Yes, in certain circumstances, the government can attempt to remove citizenship, but this almost always centers on one issue: serious fraud during the naturalization process. Denaturalization is when the government asks a court to cancel someone's citizenship because it was obtained through deliberate lies or concealment. This is not something that applies to everyone. It is not random. It does not happen because someone forgot a date, misunderstood a question, or made a small mistake years ago. Cases like this usually involve major issues: using a false identity, hiding a serious criminal past, concealing participation in violent or extremist groups, or lying about key events that directly affected the decision to approve the application. When something like this is discovered, it is not handled quietly in a back office. It becomes a formal legal case in federal court. The person is notified. They have the right to respond. They have the right to a lawyer. The government must present evidence. A judge must review that evidence. Nothing happens overnight. I know even hearing the word denaturalization can feel scary. But here's the truth that often gets lost. The overwhelming majority of naturalized citizens never face anything like this because the overwhelming majority went through their process honestly. Even if English was hard, the forms were complicated, or they made small mistakes, that is not what these cases are normally about. The focus is on clear, intentional fraud. Another point that surprises people is that there is no simple expiration date on the government's ability to look back. If serious information comes to light years later, they can review an old case. That does not mean they are constantly going through everyone's file. It means citizenship is treated as important and must be based on truth. If you followed the process in good faith, told the truth as best you could, and provided what was requested, most of the time you have nothing to fear. When denaturalization does happen, it is not about punishing people who struggled or did their best. It is about correcting situations where citizenship was granted based on information that later proved to be false. Another area that creates confusion and sometimes unnecessary fear is association with certain groups or activities after someone becomes a citizen. In very specific and extreme cases, citizenship can be questioned if a person becomes actively involved with organizations that are openly hostile to the United States or that support violence against the U.S. government. This is not about personal opinions, political disagreements, or peaceful criticism. It is not about religion, culture, community groups, or ordinary activism. The law is concerned with very direct actions, joining organizations whose explicit goals involve overthrowing or violently attacking the U.S. government, assisting hostile intelligence services, or similar activities. In some past cases, people joined extremist organizations, assisted enemy states, or took roles that clearly worked against U.S. national security. In such cases, the government may re-examine whether the oath of allegiance taken at naturalization was genuine. Sometimes this kind of review occurs within the first few years after someone becomes a citizen, because the law allows closer scrutiny of behavior that appears soon after naturalization. But again, this is extremely rare and highly specific. It does not apply to most people. Living overseas does not trigger this. Visiting your home country does not trigger this. Maintaining strong cultural, family, or emotional ties to your homeland does not trigger this. Even holding strong political views, whether supportive or critical, does not automatically place your citizenship at risk. These situations almost always involve extreme actions and are handled through formal legal channels with evidence and court review, not through rumor, not through social media, and not because of peaceful expression. If you came to the U.S., worked hard, followed the law, and took the oath sincerely, You are not the kind of person these rules are written for. Now, let's talk about something that affects far more people every day: dual citizenship. Millions of Americans today hold two passports. Some were born abroad and later naturalized in the U.S. Others were born in the U.S. to foreign parents and inherited their parents' citizenship as well. In general, the United States allows dual citizenship. Having two passports is not automatically a problem. You can visit family, stay connected to your heritage, travel back and forth, and feel close to two places at once. For many families, that's a blessing. However, there are rare situations where dual citizenship interacts with loyalty in a more complicated way. This usually involves taking a formal role in a foreign government, or swearing an oath that explicitly renounces or conflicts with allegiance to the United States. For example, becoming a high-ranking official in a foreign government that is hostile to U.S. interests, or signing a document promising exclusive loyalty to another country. In those situations, the U.S. government may examine whether the person intended to give up, in practice, their commitment to the U.S. Even then, nothing is automatic. There is careful analysis, legal review, and attention to intent. Simply renewing a foreign passport, voting in some foreign elections, or keeping strong ties overseas usually does not threaten citizenship. The central question is whether someone legally and formally intended to abandon their U.S. identity. So if you hold two passports, take a breath. For most people, it is completely fine. Live your life, travel, study, work, help your family, and honor your background. The law is not designed to punish you for your heritage. It is designed for very specific, unusual cases. There is another category people hear about in dramatic stories: losing citizenship because of treason or similarly serious actions against the United States. This is the most extreme and least common situation of all. In very limited cases, a person can face both criminal charges and the possibility of citizenship loss if they actively engage in treason, serve as an agent of an enemy government, or participate in armed attempts to overthrow the U.S. government. These are not everyday situations. They involve extensive investigations, strong evidence, and long court processes. A judge must be involved. The person has rights. The process is deliberate, not automatic. For almost everyone watching, this will never be part of your life. Studying overseas, criticizing policies, posting opinions online, or feeling upset about events does not amount to treason. Everyday worries, travel plans, and political beliefs do not come anywhere near this category. Now let's address people who were born in the United States. This is a source of a lot of unnecessary anxiety online. If you were born in the U.S. or in most U.S. territories and gained citizenship at birth, your status is generally very strong and secure under the Constitution. In nearly every situation, your citizenship cannot be taken away because you moved abroad, stayed long periods overseas, made mistakes, or your parents had immigration issues. For citizens by birth, the only extremely rare exception involves serious fraud at the very beginning: forged birth records, invented identities, schemes where documents were deliberately faked to show a U.S. birth that never happened. Those cases are unusual, difficult to prove, and usually involve organized fraud rather than ordinary families. So if you were born in the U.S., your citizenship is not fragile. It is not something that disappears because of misunderstandings or because your parents weren't citizens at the time. The law is specifically built to protect your status. When rare fraud cases occur, they go through courts and due process, not snap decisions. I want you to truly hear that. Most citizens, whether by birth or naturalization, will never face any sort of citizenship loss review. Knowing these rules is useful for understanding your rights and responsibilities, but panic is not necessary. Now, I want to gently shift from rare, exceptional citizenship issues to something that affects millions of people much more directly: ongoing immigration processes, backlogs, and everyday updates. If you're waiting on a visa, a green card, naturalization, or another decision, I know how heavy that can feel. You check your case status, you refresh your email, you hear good and bad stories from other people. It's easy to get confused and discouraged. Across many categories, USCIS is still working through backlogs that built up over several years. Some cases are being processed faster than people expected, while others take longer than the posted timelines suggest. For example, certain employment-based applications and work permits at some offices have improved, while some family-based petitions in busy regions still move slowly. This doesn't necessarily mean there's anything wrong with your case. It often means your local office is handling many thousands of files, and each case needs careful review. When you see cases being actively reviewed, it usually means your file is in the queue, not forgotten. When you see no updates for months, it's frustrating, but it can still be normal. The best you can do is stay organized. Keep copies of your documents. Monitor your online account occasionally. Respond promptly and completely if USCIS asks for more evidence. You do not need to refresh your status every hour, and you do not need to compare yourself to every other timeline you see online. Each case has its own path, and silence does not automatically mean something bad. Work visas like H-1B, L-1, and others remain in high demand. With high demand comes more waiting. Some people receive quick results, especially if they use premium processing. Others wait longer for additional security checks or background reviews. Delays are not always signals of denial. Sometimes they simply mean more verification is happening behind the scenes. For students on F-1 visas, planning ahead is essential. Schools, consulates, and USCIS all work on timelines that must line up. Maintaining full-time enrollment, following your program's rules, and staying in touch with your international office are some of the most effective ways to avoid problems. Many student issues come not from malice, but from a lack of communication. For visitors on B1 or B2 visas, officers mostly look for clarity, a clear reason for your trip, realistic travel plans, proof you intend to return home, and consistency in your answers. There is no magical script that guarantees approval. There is only honesty, preparation, and a calm attitude. Family-based immigration can be especially emotional. Visa applications for spouses, parents, children, and siblings carry deep human weight. Weddings, illnesses, reunions, personal crises. When interviews are delayed or extra documents are requested, it can feel personal. But in most cases, these delays are administrative, not judgments of your worth. Patience, careful responses, and avoiding rash decisions usually help more than anything. Green card processing, whether family-based or employment-based, continues to move, even if slowly at times. Some categories see priority dates move forward. Others stall or even retrogress. That can be discouraging. But priority date movement is part of the system balancing limited visa numbers with global demand. A backward step doesn't erase your progress. It changes your timeline. Interviews can be intimidating. Many people worry, what if I forget something? Or what if my accent makes me hard to understand? Interviews are not usually designed to trap applicants. They exist to confirm that what's on paper matches your real life. Officers may ask about your relationship, your job, your address, your background, and other basic details. If you don't remember something exactly, it's better to say so calmly and offer to provide documents than to guess. If USCIS needs more evidence, they will send a request. That letter can feel frightening, but it's part of the normal process. It means they want more clarity before deciding. Staying organized and responding by the deadline protects your case. Travel adds another layer of stress when applications are pending. Before leaving the U.S., it's important to know whether your status or application allows you to travel. Many people with pending adjustment of status need advance parole, and they must carry the correct documents. Extra time at airports is wise. Border officers are looking for consistency, that your status, your travel, and your answers all line up. For those entering as temporary visitors, similar principles apply. Be honest about why you're coming, be ready to show ties to home, and make sure your plans match your visa. There is no secret phrase. Calm, truthful communication goes a long way. Sometimes, travelers experience secondary inspection at the border. Sitting in that waiting area can feel like hours of anxiety. But in many cases, secondary is routine. A name or record needs to be double-checked. Travel history needs a closer look, or a system flag needs to be cleared. Being respectful, patient, and cooperative usually helps the process move faster. These decisions are about rules and data, not about your value as a person. As we step back and look at the whole landscape, immigration today is full of moving parts. Policies are updated, forms change, fees adjust, online portals expand. USCIS now uses more digital tools than ever for status updates, document uploads, and electronic notices. That can feel more efficient to some and confusing to others. If you ever feel lost in these systems, slow down. Read each instruction carefully. Check details twice before submitting. Most of the time, honest, small mistakes can be corrected. You do not need to rush simply because you saw a scary post online. I also want to acknowledge the emotional side. Waiting for a decision on a visa, a green card, or citizenship isn't abstract. It's deeply personal. It affects where you live, who you live with, what work you can do, and how you plan your future. Feeling tired, impatient, or anxious during this process is normal. It does not mean you're weak. It means you're human. If you feel discouraged, remember that many people before you have felt the same way. Many waited longer than they expected and still reached their goals in the end. Staying informed doesn't remove every stress, but it helps you feel more grounded and less at the mercy of rumors. As we bring this conversation together, let's return to the main question. Can someone lose U.S. citizenship? The honest answer is yes, but with very important context. It can happen in rare, specific situations. Voluntary renunciation, serious proven fraud in the naturalization process, extreme actions aligned with hostile forces, or other extraordinary circumstances. These are not everyday scenarios. They are handled slowly, carefully, and through courts, not through rumors, not through sudden surprises, and not because of ordinary mistakes. For most people who followed the rules, told the truth, and built their life honestly, citizenship is secure. The law is designed that way. Awareness is valuable, but ongoing fear is not necessary. At the same time, visas, green cards, and other immigration processes demand patience, organization, and attention. Timelines move. Rules update. But even when the road feels long, many people do eventually reach the stability they hoped for. If today's explanation helped you feel more informed or a little more calm, I'm truly glad. Immigration journeys are big, emotional chapters in people's lives. Staying aware step by step helps you feel prepared rather than powerless. If you'd like to continue receiving clear, calm updates about U.S. immigration, visas, citizenship, and travel, you're welcome to stay connected here. And if you have a question or experience you're comfortable sharing, feel free to leave it in the comments. Your story may ease someone else's worries or help them feel less alone. Thank you for spending this time with me today. I'm Timothy, and I appreciate your trust and your presence. Take care, stay informed, and stay hopeful.